Hello, you beautiful people. Me again. How y'all doing? Another beautiful day. Yeah. Look, you know, when the PlayStation 5 first came out and it was revealed, and Sony introduced it to the world, you know, I looked at the design and I knew there was a flaw with it, you know. And one of the issues I noticed with the PS5, it was always the hard drive, you know. It was always the SSD drives, and then it's the same thing with the Nvme slot. You know, the PS5 hard drive slot is not universal, you know, to where, you know, any SSD hard drives can work, you know. So this article, you know, I've seen with Mark Cerny, the architect of the PS5, he's offering suggestions, but if you're the architect, you should have known that, you know, you should have went with a universal slots for your SSD versus, you know, using the normal using the normal slot, because universal mean that you can use any kind of SSD on your PS5 and you will get the same results, you know. I mean, but as far as in data read speed in load times, you know, a universal slot, you know, it means that your SSDs, you know, any SSD will work. And that's the problem with the PS5. Another problem I noticed with the PS5, the system doesn't have a lot of space inside to where you can put, like, say, like a big fan, or like a big fan to cool things down. You don't have a lot of room inside the console. It's like this. It's like this. It's like real narrow. So that's like putting a lot of pressure on the CPU and for things to function. And that when you have limited amount of space with a console like that, it generates heat. It's not like one of those. Remember those micro PCs that they used to make? They were like the size of a game. They were like the size of a GameCube, but they were a little bit bigger. You know, Sony should have went with that design instead, so you can have some more room, so you can have like a bigger fan, and you can, like, it's easier to get access to things. I have always said that the design of the PlayStation 5 was off, and now it's showing its ugly. It's showing itself. Listen to this article I found. It says this: PS5 architect Mark Cerny offers SSD recommendations. Recommendation? That mean the system got a flaw with it. Okay. Listen to this. It says here, PlayStation 5 senior architect Mark Cerny posts online about which SSD storage solution he chose to install in his tool console at home. This past week, Sony issued a long-awaited update for the PS5 that unlocked the console hardware functionality, allowing the storage expansion via an M2 SSD card. The only problem is that there's no official proprietary PS5 SSD. PS5 user will have to figure out what's best in terms of availability and price for themselves. Luckily, PS5 architect Mark Cerny has stepped forward and offered recommendation, posting the SSD he purchased for himself on Twitter. In a message on Twitter, Cerny told his followers that what his solution was for the very active 2-gamer PS5, also implying that both him and his partner he will be using the SSD in their respective PS5s. The image they link is for Western Digital WD Black SN8 line of Nvme SSD. He also chose the version that includes the SSD heatsink, which, knowing Cerny, was likely done so that any PS5 heatsink dispersion will help in the long run. And then it says here, as for further details about the device, all Cerny said was that he chose Western Digital Black SN850 from multiple options of SSD that offers 7,000 megabytes sequential read speed. The recommended read speed is 5,550, so Cerny is opting for a PS5 SSD above what's expected. See, it's not universal. Anyway, as for the storage size, Cerny doesn't clarify all of the SSDs in the SN850 line have the requisite 7,000 megabyte sequential read speed, so storage size is just a matter of necessity and price, which goes back to that video that I did about paying $950 for SSD. The PlayStation 5 doesn't have a universal SSD slot on it. Okay, and that's why people are running into problems with the PlayStation 5. And not only that, the PlayStation 5 is real narrow. You don't have a lot of room to where you can pull air across a lot of things, so the CPU can cool. If the PlayStation 5 was like, say like the size of the original Xbox, the very first Xbox, the size of the original first Xbox, same size, same width, you know, same width, and then that way you could have more room and more access to get things, to get access to things. For instance, if the PlayStation 5 was the size of the original Xbox, the very first Xbox that Microsoft made, same size, the motherboard would be at the bottom of the console, but then the hard drive and the CD-ROM drives, all you gotta do is pull the top off and then go inside the system and then make the necessary changes or upgrade your SSD. The PS5 doesn't have a universal SSD slot, and that's one problem. The second problem with the PS5, it is too narrow, and you're gonna have a lot of problems like trying to find air and pull air across that CPU, especially when things get heat up in the system. And that's the design flaw with the system. You know, I know they try to come out with a bang, so to speak, in their design, but the design flaw is off. You know, if it was the size of the original Xbox, the very first Xbox that Microsoft made, same size, probably about a little bit more wide, or a little bit more lengthwise, a little bit more, widthwise, a little bit more, then the PlayStation 5 would be in a better spot. You know, that way you could have more air flow across the CPU, and that way you can put a big fan inside the console, so it can pull air, so things can cool off. And that's the issue they're running into. So the system is too narrow and too small, and number two, they don't have a universal SSD slot on it. You know? Because right now he's making suggestions. You know, people making suggestion about what SSD to use. So that lets you know right there that the PS5 doesn't have a universal SSD slot, and that is a problem. You know, because Seagate's make SSD. There's plenty of SSD manufacturers out there, whether it's Samsung, Seagate, there's a whole bunch, Western Digital, there's a whole bunch of them that makes hard drives. You know, so Sony needs to take the I hope that they fix that problem with the newer PS5 that they're making, probably the PS5 Pro or the PS5 Mega or Slim or whatever. But I hope that they fix this issue with the PS5. But that's the main issue that they're facing, is that, you know, the system is too narrow. You know, it's too narrow. You know, one thing about Xbox is that when they build their console, they build it so enough air can flow across the CPU, and that they can have a big fan, and the fan pull all the air, and you name it. The original Xbox got one. The 360 has one. The Xbox One has one, and now the Xbox One Series has one, and then now the Xbox Series S and X, they have a big fan inside their console to where they can generate enough cooling for the CPU. You know, that's one of the problems with the PlayStation PlayStation consoles. They're too narrow. You know, and you can damage your system, because once the system starts to overheat and it's not pulling a lot of air across the CPU, that's bad news. You know, things can freeze up, things can stop, you name it. So they need to redesign the PlayStation 5. You know, probably make it the size of the original Xbox One. You know, make it the same size, or the size of the Xbox One series. Make it the size of one of those. You know, but make it to where it's like, okay, you can put a big fan up in there. You have enough room so you can have get a lot of air flowing across. The fan can pull a lot of air and cool the CPU off. That's one of the problems. That's what they need to do. Their systems are too small. It's the same thing with the PS4. It's the same thing now. It's the same thing with the PS5. You know, the systems, you know, they're too small. They're too narrow. You know, and that's why they always come out with a newer model like PS5 or PS4. That's why they came out with a newer model PS4s. You know, they're always trying to find a way to improve, you know, airflow and CPU performance. So, but this with the PS5, it's an SSD problem, and the console is too small. You know, too small. It needs to be a little bit more wider, and they need to have a universal SSD slot on the PS5. You know, so they can get themselves out of this mess that they find themselves in. Anyway, I'm going to leave a link in the description box with this article. Nice talking to you people again. Chris, still a Star Wars and Star Trek fan. Or Dark Side. Come on. Peace.